Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for having me. I've been asked to give you a historical introduction. It is about describing the development from the antiquity to the 20th century. Of course, I know it's such a long period of time to show even close to everything, but I would like to try to give you a little insight and take you on a little journey through military history and give you a few exciting anecdotes. This is what you're going to learn here. And I would like to start with a definition. What do we consider to be maneuver warfare? Well, the key element of maneuver warfare is the disruption and disorganization of the enemy rather than a fixation with the kill this and kill that syndrome. The maneuver style of war is more psychological in its destruction of the enemy, whereas firepower attrition war is more physical. And, well, the seeking out of advantages will require the use of opportunity tactics on the battlefield and coupled with bold, aggressive action and individual initiative. So it's important here that you have really psychological considerations. And, well, it could be achieved by encirclements and also flank attacks. And if a flanking maneuver succeeds, then you have the real psychological advantage because your enemy is surrounded by two or more directions, and so you have your enemy really confused, and you can really be a threat to him. We begin with the old Egyptian Empire, 9th dynasty, with Ramses II and an incredible defeat of a great power. Well, the Egyptian army wanted to hit the Hittites. Hittites in German is Hittite. And the Hittite Empire was located what is now Anatolia, Lebanon, Syria, and Israel. Well, Ramses wanted to attack hard at the Battle of Kadesh, and he wanted to be supported by Bedouin fighters, but at the end of the day, Ramses was then missing out these additional units, and the Hittites surrounded the Egyptians with over 1,000 chariots. And Ramses and his armies were forced to flee, so it's very important which ally you really rely on. But why I wanted to tell about this is Ramses really made this defeat, he turned it into a victory, because at home he just said with propaganda, okay, we stayed at status quo, and at the end, okay, we were victorious. And it's also important because we have the first peace treaty here, which you can see at the bottom line. So now we turn to the European continent, and now to Greece in particular. It's about the Dark Ages, we're talking about the Bronze Age, Palace period, post-Palace period. And yeah, here you have the so-called Mask of Agamemnon, which was found by Schliemann. Of course, this is not Agamemnon. But we have we have a really great range of weapons already here. So here we have sword types they so-called from A to G, but here we have the Naui 2 swords, which became a role model, the state of the art at this time on Central Europe and also in Southern Europe. Here you have the Dandra panoply, and the panoplia. It's said to be mainly a full coverage of the body and is made totally of bronze. We have here Mycenaean about 1400 BC. You have the bow's tooth helmet, which is also very widespread in this period of time, also Mycenaean. And this is very important. We have the Ways of Kyiv, found in Italy about 640 BC. In the upper register, which you can see here, you have armed warriors led by a pipes player preparing for a battle. And these warriors are heavily armed hoplites. And yeah, they carry spears and shields. But why this is so important is we have the first really showing of hoplite warfare of a proto-phalanx. And yeah, considering typical Greek warfare, we are also talking about the Trojan War and the war descriptions in Homer's Iliad. Here we have, in the Iliad, we have an infantry with the promachoi at the front row. In the promachoi, they were the front warriors. We have chariots, we have loose setups, and also we have a phalanx attachment, but no melee within these descriptions. And here, yeah, I guess you all know, you all know that. I just want to show you something what Hollywood can make out of, well, this armor. Here you have at the right side, you have a typical hoplite warrior with shield and helmet, and you can see the similarities here. But as I showed you before, when we're talking about the period, 1400 BC, the palace period of Messenian, it looked completely different, so always be aware when you're watching movies. Yeah, here you can see an example of the phalanx. The Battle of Marathon, with the example of double envelopment. It's that you always had the problem that the Persians were superior concerning manpower. But here, with the double envelopment, you have forces simultaneously attack both flanks. And, well, the importance of flank positions led to practice, and it became traditional to place the best troops on the flank here. We now turn to this guy, Alexander the Great, and I would describe his approach really bold, because, okay, he was a young king, and he said, okay, I just want to rule whole Asia, let's get down to it. And yeah, his nature of maneuvers is really, if you are in an inferior situation, you have to be very anticipating and be flexible. The Battle of Hydaspes in India, I wanted to use this as an example because here Alexander had to fight against war elephants. And, well, how do you deal when you have war elephants, which are really massive? And he also had the problem that his army was so exhausted, because if you imagine, if you're moving from Greece to India on the land, it's quite a long march. And, well, the main problem here is that horses or the cavalry would automatically shy away from elephants. So you have to think of something, and he decided to really attack the elephants with lances and with arrows, so he could then march into the left side of the Indian formation, and in the end he succeeded with that. So just a short summary. Now we go to the Roman Empire, and this is really synonymous for professionalism and focus on logistics. The Battle of Pharsalus in 48 BC. Well, we have on the one hand Pompey on the right side, and he had 54,000 legionnaires. Caesar, on the other hand, he only had 22,000. So you can see the difference. But Caesar, he detached his third line and made a fourth out of it, and he placed them in a kind of hook formation, so the fourth line couldn't be really seen. And he also had the advantage of the weather conditions. But at the end, Caesar's cavalry was, okay, it was defeated, but his foot soldiers in the rear ranks, they held firm. And in the end, Pompey had to flee. And this battle is also famous for, because afterwards he went to Alexandria and he made Cleopatra queen of Egypt. The chariots, really important in Roman Empire. It was not only used for just war considerations, it's also very important for sports. And yeah, you have different forms. You have the biga, triga, quadriga. It depends on how many horses are attached to the chariot. And it required so much training to really be able to handle that. Well, of course, you've all known the movie Ben-Hur, which was an amazing ending scene. And so this is really quite an amazing task here. Yeah, and the gladius as a new type of sword, it was established from the 3rd century BC to the 3rd century AD. And this was the role model at the Roman Empire. So now we turn to the Middle Ages. And in the Middle Ages, there was an own form of maneuver. The construction of those really large castles and fortresses, they provoked the development of siege strategies. So with really powerful weapons and perfection of catapults. Siege strategies is in German Belagerung. So the medieval battles can be reconstructed through lyrical poetry. You can see Wolfram von Eschenbach, Parzival, and of course also historiography. But it must be noted that if you read anything about wars and war descriptions, it's not the main theme. In this poetry, it's more about the characteristics of the hero, so how he is evolving, and it's about morality and also a Christian morality. Here you have the so-called warhammer. This example that's from Saxony. Of course, you all know those really heavy swords used by knights, but the warhammer was decisively constructed to really smash the armors, and it was very effective by doing that. So medieval warfare. What could a medieval operation look like? Well, you could say it's consisted of 3 divisions or groups, and at the front there were archers or crossbowmen, and in the middle the knights and the foot soldiers, and at the back the rear guard. And in addition, you have wagons, you have pack horses with provision, tents, and siege troves. For instance, the ladder. The ladder was very important for sieging. But, well, the infantry had to begin the attack, and the knights then followed. But throughout the Middle Ages, the infantry was the most important form of fighting, and the heavy cavalry became more and more obsolete. Later we went on. Henry VIII. I'm sorry, I still have to talk about this monarch. And here you can see a custom-made armor because he got really heavy at the end of his reign, so everything was possible with adapting the plates here. And in 1544, he decided to take over the command at the siege of Bologna. And the French garrison firepower, it prevented any English approach, but the English, they made tunnels underneath, and it was combined with massive explosives, so a lot of gunpowder was used then, and the English were successful at the end. One art, if you take a closer look at paintings and war descriptions, you always have to be careful because history is a story told by the winners, and they really like to humble the defeated army, and it's often that the enemy is shown as completely chaotic and your own army as glorious and really succeeding. And the beginning of the battle was most important, the end of the battle, but in between we don't have many paintings or anything like that. Catapults and the so-called trebuchet. The trebuchet was, I would say, the perfection of catapults. It was mainly used in the Asian area, and it's said that Genghis Khan also used this, the trebuchet. Yeah, here we have another summary. Now we turn to the modern era. You have a picture of the 30 Years' War. And in the 30 Years' War, instead of large battle formations, we have small units and mercenary troops that operated more in little skirmishes. Skirmishes is mehr ein Scharmützeln. So the greatest development in military strategy is a move to long-range weapons here. So we don't want any close combat anymore. We want a distance. But the problem here was that artillery pieces were hard to move. And it's the French who really improved on that. In the late 1760s, we already have Jean-Baptiste Grumboval, who made it standard how to transport the artillery pieces, so it was very effective. And of course, we have the Grande Armée and Napoleon. Napoleon achieved that with the levée en masse. You have a superior position considering manpower. And the Grande Armée, well, it was created like a myth. If any other country would say, okay, the Grande Armée is coming, it's already a threat just by hearing the word. And, well, Napoleon, he was also, he made his part of it. I mean, if you look at him, it's just you have the audacity to really say, okay, I want to be ruler of the world. But if you look at him, it's just a normal man. But it's about also psychological warfare. If you really achieve that your enemy is so threatened by just your name or just the idea that your army is coming towards them, then you must be very successful here. And Napoleon, he really wanted to make the artillery as a main unit in combats. So it went from a supporting position for the artillery to really a decisive and really destructive role on its own. And he also was good at coordination and on a festive tempo at the battlefield. And he also wanted to make the cannons more lighter than. The Napoleonic maneuvers, Manoeuvres sur le derrière, speed and firepower. But of course, the Manoeuvres sur le derrière, it means that in an ideal form, you conduct a feint to the enemy's front, so just slightly touching, so saying hi, but at the same time, the main force would fall on the enemy's rear ranks, and that's what he made his perfection. He was not the one who invented this maneuver, but he was the first to really use it consistently. And that's what he was famous for. And also he loved to combine speed and really rapid movement. Well, at 1813 we have the coalition warfare. Napoleon had to face 3 armies with together we have over 500,000 soldiers, but I just need to skip that because we made it time. Yeah, the battle at Deutsch-Wagram in 1809, and this is really something that I want to introduce you to because it's my profession. It's what we can learn from dead soldiers or war graves. And here at the Napoleonic Wars in Austria, we have so much information about those dead soldiers. So the archaeological teams, they found out that more than 60% of the soldiers analyzed, they had really great diseases, constant inflammations, and really bad fractures in different areas. And most of them suffered from rickets. In German it's Rachitis, or lack of vitamin D. And you can see it with the formation of the bones, with the rib cage, and you can also see it on the teeth. Yeah, so it's really, and they had to march really hard because they had so bad fractures here in this area on the foot. So yeah, it was a tragic fate for most soldiers. Just quick. yeah, I guess you all know him, Stonewall Jackson, and he was so famous for his raiding campaigns. And when we talk about raiding, it's about really capturing and taking over any infrastructure, and he was so well doing that. And this is a central aspect. We now have international regulations for land warfare. It starts from the Petersburg Convention, we go on to the Geneva Convention in 1864. But the main position here was that something had to be banned. So certain weapons or poison gas needed to be banned, and it was also considered that it was necessary to create private aid societies with a neutral medical staff. Yeah, great. Well, so now we're going on to the 20th century with 2 world wars. Yeah. This is a nice message from Franz Ferdinand in spring of 1914. Well, just a brief summary. Well, he's describing everything is so great here, and the maneuvers are really they're achieving. And well, at the end, we know what happened in summer. So here's another example, a nice source how maneuvers were described in Habsburg monarchy. You have a really how to adjust them, how the costs would look like, and the equipment. But well, how did World War come about? Well, one could say it's a lack of political intelligence, and I would agree too. Many blame the German Empire that massively incited this war, but let's take a look. Franz Josef, he turns to Kaiser Wilhelm, and he was in complete distress after the ultimatum to Serbia. And the Austro-Hungarian diplomats and politicians, they didn't know really how to proceed. And, well, Germany was considered rather ignorant because they thought, okay, in 1913, at the Balkan Wars, it has shown that, okay, Russia doesn't intervene if anything happens on the Balkan. So Germany thought, okay, in 1914, it would be the same situation. And Germany also said, okay, but please, if there is war, please stop at Belgrade. They just wanted, if they wanted to, it was perceived to be a local war. And the Germans were really frightened for the Russian mobilization. But at the end, well, Great Britain tried to calm down the situation, but it was much too late. It was the end of July, and well, there was no time left. And yeah, then at the end, Italy should be stayed in neutral stance, and on August 1st, the Germans mobilized generally and declared war on France, and this was very comfortable for the Austrians because now you have Germany really involved in that. The first tanks, they were developed in France and Great Britain from 1915 on, but really used from September 1916. But were they a game changer? I would rather say not really. Here you have on the right side, you have the German model A7V. It was quite rapid, I would say, for this time, but they had great problems with cooling of the engines. And it was a general problem with the speed, the range, and the reliability of those tanks. So they were a supporting unit at the time, but really weren't decisive at all. Lawrence of Arabia, just to show a brief insight to that. Of course, the Bedouins, in 1916, he knew when he arrived in Arabia, he knew, okay, the Bedouins weren't able to really fight on on battlefields, so he had to use the guerrilla tactic and also small units with surprise attacks, and that's the only way he could really succeed here. Dramatic effects. The First World War was such an unbelievable, brutal and inhuman experience for most of the soldiers, and their nerves, they reacted so badly, and the psychologists at the time, they didn't know how to really treat these new diseases. We have traumas from grenade impacts, we have the shell shock, the war tremors, and it was really tragic because they weren't taken seriously. They said, okay, you're just hysterical, and the treatment was very brutal through electrotherapy. So now we go on to the Second World War. And the German classic maneuver, the Blitzkrieg. So here we have combined arms. We're using a rapid, overwhelming force concentration, and that was the strength of the German warfare. You have already seen it in 1870, 1871. For short combats, the Germans, like here in France or in Western Europe, they really succeeded. But the longer the war took place, the heavier and more difficult it became for the Germans. Kursk, of course, the Wehrmacht with the Operation Citadel, they wanted to really break the front line of the Soviets, and this line was over 150 kilometers, so long. But they couldn't use the momentum of surprise. So, they really failed at doing that, and it was also shown how many tanks were used there. Just D-Day, the most important thing about D-Day was the weather map, by the way. And Soviet Union, just the last thing, they're about infantry waves, crushing blow. It's not about one single combat, it's more about waves because they had the manpower. And of course you see here the role model T-34, which became also state of the art. And that's it. Thank you so much for your attention.